Hello and welcome in today's session. Today, we shall be talking about environmental and ecological movements in India. Environmental and ecological movements are among the important examples of the collective actions of several social groups. Protection and recognition of constitutional and democratic rights, which are not defined by law but form an important part of the day-to-day living of the subaltern masses, like the control over their resources, the right of indigenous people to preserve their culture, protection of environment and maintenance of ecological balance are significant concerns of these movements as they affect the human life to a great extent. These movements also reflect an enlarged vision of economics and politics. Economic justice sought by these movements does not mean mere distribution of resources but encompass a large vision like enhancement in the quality of life through recognition of people's right over their natural resources, their right to live with dignity, and their participation in decision making as well. The concerns of human environment received spectacular attention of scholars following the conclusion of the United Nations Conference on Human Environment, Stockholm in 1972. By the 80s, the Green Movement became a worldwide phenomenon encompassing various countries of the world, including India. These movements are grouped under tribal and peasant movements and as well under new social movements. This is also because ecological aspects are generally associated with peasant and tribals whose survival is associated with the state of natural resources like forests, water, etc. Environmental movements in India, issues and concerns. The environmental movement in a broad generic term that is generally used to describe and understand different types of local struggles and conflicts concerned with livelihood issues and ecological security within the larger context of the development debate. These struggles, in fact, critiqued and questioned the notion of development and conservation ecology pursued by the Indian state and its officials since colonial times. The genesis of the environmental movement in India can be traced to the Chipko movement in 1973 in Gadwal region in the new state of Uttaranchal. In fact, between 1970s and 1980s, there were several struggles in India around issues of rights to forests and water, which raised larger ecological concerns like rights of communities in forest resources, sustainability of large-scale environmental projects like dams, issues of displacement and rehabilitation, etc. The Indian environmental movement is critical of the colonial model of development pursued by the post-colonial state. The post-independent state failed to build up a development agenda based on the needs of the people and continued to advocate the modern capitalist agenda, which led to the destruction of environment, poverty, and marginalization of rural communities. Formation of national parks, sanctuaries, protected areas in India in fact represent the conventional environmentalism which the Indian state advocated with the aim of preserving wildlife and biodiversity by pushing people out of these areas. In response to this conventional environmentalism that considered the Indian state to be the custodian of natural resources, the environmental movement in India advocated the ideology of environmentalism of the poor. It not only criticized modern developmentalism, but also strongly advocated the revival of traditional self-sufficient village economy. It brought communities to the center stage of Indian environmental discourse. The environmentalists stated that local communities were best suited to conserve natural resources as their survival depended in the sustainable use of such resources. They argued that in order to make the sustainable use of the resource, the customary rights Our traditional rights should be given back to the people that were taken away by the state, and traditional institutions should also be recognized. In a nutshell, the environmental movement in India concentrates on the issue of equity in relation to access and use of natural resources. Popular movements in India. Chipko movement. The origin of modern environmentalism and environmental movements in India can be ascribed to the Chipko movement in the central Himalaya region in the early 1970s. Chipko movement, launched to protect the Himalayan forests from destruction, has its roots in the pre-independence days. Many struggles were organized to protest against the colonial forest policy during the early decades of 20th century. People's main demand in these protests was that the benefits of the forest, especially the right to fodder, should go to the local people. These struggles have continued in the post-independent era, as the forest policies of independent India were not different from that of colonial ones. The origin of Chipko, Chipak Jayega to Hug, took place during 1973. In the early 1973, the Forest Department refused to allot ash trees to the Dhasoli Gram Swaraj Sangh (DGSS), a local cooperative organization based in Chamoli districts for making agricultural implements. On the other hand, the Forest Department allotted ash trees to a private company, that is Siemens Co. This incident provoked the DGSS to fight against this injustice through lying down in front of timber trucks and burning resin and timber depots, as was done in Quit India movement. When these methods were found unsatisfactory, Chandi Prasad Bhatt, one of the leaders, suggested of embracing the trees, and thus Chipko was born. This form of protest was instrumental in driving away the private company from felling the ash trees. With its success, the movement spread to other neighboring areas, and subsequently the movement came to be popularly known as Chipko movement internationally. From its beginning, the Chipko movement concentrated on ecological issues such as depletion of forest cover and soil erosion. Three important aspects were responsible for the success of Chipko movement. First, the close links between the livelihoods of the local people and the nature of the movement. The local people considered Chipko as a fight for basic subsistence that have been denied to them by the institutions and policies of the state. The second aspect is with regard to the nature of agitation. Unlike other environmental movements, Chipko has strictly adhered to the Gandhian tradition of freedom struggle, that is, non-violence. Third, the simplicity and sincerity of the leaders like Sundarlal Bhogana and their access to national leaders like Mrs. Indira Gandhi. Other politicians and officials also helped to success of the movement to a larger extent. The demands of the Chipko movement were as follows: complete stoppage of cutting trees for commercial purposes. The traditional rights should be recognized on the basis of minimum needs of the people. Making the arid forest green by increasing people's participation in tree cultivation. Formation of village committees to manage forests. Development of the forest-related home-based industries, as making available the raw materials, money and techniques. Giving priority to afforestation in the light of local conditions, requirements and variety. Epico movement. Inspired by the Chipko movement, the villagers of Western Ghats in the Uttara Kannada region of Karnataka started Epico Chalavali movement during September and November 1983 regarding the destruction of forest was caused due to commercial felling of trees for timber extraction. Natural forests of the region were felled by the contractors that resulted in soil erosion and drying up of perennial water resources. In the Saklani village in Sirse, the forest dwellers were prevented from collecting usufructus like twigs and dried branches and non-timber forest products for the purpose of fuel wood, fodder, honey, etc. In September 1983, women and youth from Saklani and surrounding villages walked 5 miles to a nearby forest and hugged trees there. They forced the fellers and the contractors of the State Forest Department to stop cutting trees. The agitation continued for 38 days, and this forced the state government to finally concede to their demands and withdrew the order for felling of trees in the forests. The local people backed the movement. Even the daily wage laborers hired by the contractors to fell trees stopped doing their work. In October, the movement entered into its second phase and it took place in Bengaon Forest. Here, the forest was a mixed tropical semi-evergreen type and mostly on hilly terrain. The inhabitants of the region, who were primarily tribal or the indigenous people, depended on the forest for their survival and livelihood. Disappearance of bamboo due to commercial felling deprived them of the basic source to make items like baskets, mats. The main source of their income was the sale of these items. When felling of trees did not stop, people started the movement. The movement was spontaneous in nature. The local indigenous people hugged trees to stop them from cutting, and finally the government had to give in to their demands. In fact, Epico movement became a symbol of people's power for their rights of natural resources vis-a-vis the state. In November, the movement spread to Nidgod village in Sidapur Taluka, preventing the state from commercial felling of trees in the deciduous forests of the region. The Epico movement was successful in its threefold objectives: protection of the existing forest cover, regeneration of trees in denuded lands, and utilizing forest wealth with proper consideration to conservation of natural resources. The movement also created awareness among the villagers throughout the Western Ghats about the ecological danger posed by the commercial and industrial interests to their forests, which was the main source of sustenance for the people. Like the Chipko, the Epico movement revived the Gandhian way of protest and mobilization for sustainable society in which there is a balance between man and nature. Narmada Bachao Andolan. Narmada River project, encompassing 3 major states of Western India, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, is the most important case study in terms of maturation of environmental movement and dynamics related to politics of development. No other development project in India has brought into focus the intensity and magnitude of eco-development problems to such a level of informed debate, political mobilization and grassroots activism as this project. The controversy that surrounded this project had challenged the government at all levels and at the same time was successful in creating and forging linkages between civil society organizations and NGOs, both at the national and international level. In fact, it has contributed to the political discourse of alternative development in India. Project Sardar Sarovar is an interstate multipurpose project with a terminal major dam in Gujarat is being built on river Narmada, which is the 5th largest river in India and has 1,320 kilometer length. The Narmada Valley project, with its 2 mega projects, Sardar Sarovar project and Narmada Sagar project in Madhya Pradesh, is the largest single river valley project with the objective of making the world's largest man-made lake. The reservoir will submerge 37,000 hectares of land, of which 11,000 hectares are classified as forest. It will displace about 1 lakh persons of 248 villages. 19 of Gujarat, 36 of Maharashtra and 193 of Madhya Pradesh. The state government initiated the project as Gujarat was one of the worst water-starved regions in India and there was drastic shortage of water for domestic, commercial, agricultural and industrial needs. It is seen as the world's worst man-made ecological disaster and it considered unviable. Queries arose concerning the promises about resettlement and rehabilitation program set up by the government. As a consequence, each state had a people's organization that addressed the concerns. Soon, these groups became together to form the Narmada Bachao Andolan or NBO, or the Save the Narmada movement under the leadership of Medha Patkar, a social activist. It may be mentioned that NBA began a fight for information about the Narmada Valley Development Project, but developed as a fight for just rehabilitation for the lakhs of the people to be ousted by the Sardar Sarovar Dam and other large dams along the Narmada River. In 1988, the NBA demanded formally the stoppage of all works on the Narmada Valley Development Projects. And in September 1989, more than 50,000 people gathered in the valley from all over India to pledge to fight destructive development. A year later, thousands of villagers walked and boated to a small town in Madhya Pradesh to reiterate their pledge to drown rather than agree to move from their homes. Many issues of the project are yet unresolved. However, what is more important is that the movement has been successful to a considerable extent. The achievements of the movement are exit of the World Bank from Sardar Sarovar in 1993, halt of Sardar Sarovar construction between 1994 and 99, withdrawal of foreign investment from Maheshwara Dam during the period 1999 to 2001. The NBA is unique in the sense that it underlined the importance of people's right to information which the authorities finally had to concede under media and popular pressure. It was successful not only in mobilizing hundreds of thousands of people from different walks of life to put pressure on the state government for its anti-people policies, affecting and displacing lakhs of tribals from their homes and livelihoods. It also received immense international support. Resorting to non-violent mode of protest and following Gandhian version of constructive work, NBA, as it's popularly known, is distinctive landmark in the history of environmentalism in India. However, in the face of reluctant attitude of the governments, the NBA continues with the involvement of affected people and civil society organizations. Urban-based environmental movements. In the recent past, environmental pollution caused due to the industrialization has become the focus of collective action by the civil society organizations, NGOs, concerned individuals, especially lawyers, scientists, environmentalists, and social activists. They sought the intervention of the judiciary and drew the attention of state for showing concern to the pollution caused by the process of modernization. However, the main focus of the collective action against pollution has been in the urban areas. Certain tragedies like gas leakage in Bhopal-based Union Carbide MNC, Chernobyl in former Soviet Union, where thousands of people were killed, created worries among the people on the negative effect of the industrialization. Though the 90s have seen increased concern about the environmental pollution, awareness about the disastrous impact of the environmental pollution started growing in the 60s. All the major cities of India are facing acute air, water, and other kinds of environmental pollution. Continuous immigration of the people from rural areas into the cities, their habitat in the congested areas which exist along with the polluting small-scale industries, increasing number of vehicles and unplanned expansion of cities, open drainage, etc. have created levels of environmental hazard. This pollution made people susceptible to multiple diseases. The Nehruvian model gave more emphasis on the industrialization without showing much concern for the pollution it was going to create. However, in 1976, a constitutional amendment called upon the state to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country, and made the fundamental duty of every citizen to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. In the following decades, the state passed legislations to prevent air pollution and environmental protection like the Air Act of 1981 and Environmental Protection Act of 1986. The judiciary has become the arbitrator of people's rights, which include their protection from the environmental protection, also since the emergence of the device of the public interest litigation or PIL. In the face of indifference of the executive and legislature about the people's problems, the PIL has become an effective weapon through which people seek the intervention of the state on these issues. The intervention of the judiciary forced the state to introduce some measures for prevention of environmental pollution. To sum up, environmental and ecological movements became prominent in India since 1970, like other such movements. The concerns of the movement are not confined to any particular group. They are all encompassing the entire village and urban communities, women, tribals, peasants, middle classes, and nature. Even the issues raised by them concern all sections of society in varying degrees. These issues are protection of people's rights to access to the natural resources, prevention of land degradation, preventing commercialization of natural resources and environmental pollution, maintenance of ecological balance, rehabilitation of displaced people, etc., etc. These issues are also related to people's dignity, environmental rights, and their decision-making rights on the issues concerning them. With this, today's session comes to its conclusion. Hope that you have grasped the content and you will try to improve your knowledge and will further study in order to have the in-depth study of these moments. With this, we are signing off. Shall meet you again. Till then, good luck and goodbye.